Good morning and welcome to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent with me, Chris Price. Joining me today are Frazer Thomson, Chief Executive of winemaker Chapel Down, and Owen Hunnam, a serial tech entrepreneur who recently was featured in the Kent Business Top 30 Under 30 list. They'll be discussing Kent's role in the growth of the English wine industry, which has been recognised on a global stage with numerous awards and has attracted huge investment. First today though, we're talking about the impact of the EU referendum on business. With some polls indicating voters are leaning towards Brexit, the prospect of Britain leaving the single market is affecting decision making in the boardroom and making it harder for small firms to attract investment. Our reporter Duarte Diaz found out more.
As the big day for the EU referendum quickly approaches, there's still much discussion as to how it will affect our daily lives. But equally as important is how it will affect our businesses. So I've come here to Tunbridge Wells to talk to a lawyer firm who could tell me a bit more about this.
I think the economic environment we are working in at the moment is still relatively fragile. So any uncertainty is bad for business. Our larger clients have, I think, paused, waiting to see what the outcomes are before they make further investment decisions. I think people get nervous, and business people, particularly on a micro level, the owner-managed business community, of which there are a huge number in Kent, they tend to wait, and they want to wait and see what happens before they make decisions that will affect the way their businesses work and the way that people in their businesses are impacted.
Uncertainty seems to be the key word on the subject. I spoke to the CEO of a car-sharing business from Maidstone who has been quickly expanding his company, and he certainly agrees.
My personal opinion is that business will suffer. We're just finding we're having communications with, say, investors particularly, and it seems that they are just kind of holding, waiting for the referendum to be over so they can commit. For us and the company, we want to go into Europe, and the fact that we can have a single digital marketplace of 500 million people across borders quite easily is a big tick for us.
With only a couple of weeks until the vote, most business leaders have taken a side, but the debate is nowhere near over. This is Duarte Diaz for Chem TV.
So, Owen, you are looking for funding at the moment with your latest business venture, Idea Drop. Is the EU referendum having an effect on people investing in business at the moment?
It's interesting, Chris. Probably not, is what I'd say initially. We raised about 300k about a year or so ago when we initially launched the product and the business. We're raising a second seed round now, securing in the region of about 800k to £1 million. And the interest that we're seeing, certainly from our extended network and people that aren't in our existing network, is really high, and it's not something that we're seeing having an immediate effect, which is great, and we're really pleased about that.
So in that case, if the EU referendum is not having an effect, some of these arguments about the sort of the fears that that's being sort of said about what an EU exit, what a Brexit would look like, do you think those arguments are fair?
Personally, no, I don't think that a lot of those arguments are fair. I'm a big believer in remaining in the EU and the benefits of those for commerce and business in the UK economy massively. And certainly we're doing business in the EU. We're seeing lots of our clients sort of come from that are based in European locations. So for us, it's very much a positive, but we're not seeing it having an effect on our business or indeed our ability to raise capital at this stage as a London-based startup. So,
Frazer, you guys have raised investment through a variety of means that share. You're obviously a listed company, but also you've done a very high-profile crowdfunding measure. Are businesses looking for other ways to attract investment at the moment? Are other ways proving more fruitful?
Well, I think they are. I mean, our experience really on crowdfunding tells a very interesting story because our crowdfunding really connects with consumers as much as it does investors. And actually, people back people and businesses, and even at a huge corporate level, they're still doing that, but they're doing it with large sums of money. Individual investors, something they can truly understand, a bottle of wine is pretty easy to understand, they can back that. And I think this whole question of where this investment's going, if you've got a great idea, if you've got a great business, actually the uncertainty that you're seeing around the world at the moment won't stop an investor investing if it's a good proposition. You said in the intro, the amount of money going into English wines at the moment is huge. Some of that's coming from people like Tattinger, you know. So they're not thinking about Brexit, they're thinking this is a great idea.
Okay, so if people aren't thinking about Brexit, is there going to be a problem if there is a vote to leave the European Union?
Well, I think there's going to be change, and it's a question of how fast that change comes through. And I think what you see in the business community is we just don't like uncertainty, and uncertainty is generally not a good thing. But actually, if you look at the long term, will Britain see its way through if we come out of it? I'm sure it will. Will it affect English wine? Probably not. So from a business perspective, yes, we'd like to stay in because we don't like uncertainty, but will it shake our business to the root and core? No, it won't.
Okay. In the latest issue of Kent Business, I spoke to a company owner. They were affected by EU regulations, which has meant that they can't sell their products because they don't have a certain CE mark, and they don't see a good reason why. They say that they can't export to certain places because the EU doesn't have trade deals with the places they're looking for. Do you think that there is at all a credible argument for exiting the European Union?
I think doing business in 2016, I would definitely say not a credible argument in my view. I'm a big believer that with the explosion of social and digital technology and the ability to access that technology, business and how that happens is becoming much flatter, and it's much easier to do business in different countries than it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago. So I think that those restrictions are becoming far fewer, and there's less friction than there was before in terms of preventing you doing business in other countries. So those, for me, are core reasons why absolutely it's important as a UK-based business to stay in the EU for those reasons. But just touching very briefly on Fraser's point about the crowdfunding, I wanted to mention, I don't know if you saw it, Fraser, there was they raised, Mondu, a challenger bank, they raised £1 million in 96 seconds on CrowdCube, which was the most money raised in the fastest amount of time. So it's a great idea around in terms of investing in businesses and people, and the money's always there if the product's right. So it's interesting.
Brilliant. Right, both of you, thank you very much for your views on that topic. Moving on now, we turn to the less sobering topic of the rapid growth of the English wine industry, and importantly, the role Kent is playing in it. Each month I write stories about how more and more of the county's winemakers are winning awards, particularly taking on the Champagne region with our sparkling wines. Last year, even the French decided to get in on the act, with Tattinger announcing their intention to launch a vineyard in the Garden of England. Tom Ellis went to visit a winemaker in Barham near Canterbury to find out why Kent has become the place to be in the industry.
So I think it's quite an exciting time really to get involved in this industry, because not only is there an insatiable appetite locally for English wines and English sparkling wines in particular, but internationally people are beginning to hear about it.
So is there, you said there was perhaps limited space to be growing wines. Do you think it could grow more in Kent? Could you invest further
Yes.
in other parts?
Yes, there is no doubt there is more suitable land out there. We get asked to actually go and see quite a few by farmers who are asking whether or not this particular bit of land is suitable for viticulture.
The Kent wine industry is thriving, and the potential is there for it to keep doing so. But how can Kentish wine compete with established wines from around the world in the shops?
There's much greater awareness, and people now aren't as reticent to select, say, high quality Kentish sparkling wine instead of champagne for celebrations and as gifts. So there's now a trend and a bit of kudos to select a really good Kentish sparkling wine. The great thing is the serious winemakers here in Kent are aspiring for very high quality. They know they have to compete with the highest quality champagne and sparkling wines from around the world, and so they're aspiring for that. So there's no shortcuts, and they're learning all the time. The vineyards are getting older that have been planted, and they're learning more as they go along, so the quality is lifting all the time.
As investment in vineyards comes into Kent, I'm sure we can expect to see more of Kent's finest in the shops. This is Tom Ellis for KMTV.
So, Fraser, why then are Kent vineyards winning so many awards at the moment?
Well, I think it's a combination of a number of things. So you heard about terroir, and you know that the soil and the temperature is all good. But actually, we've got some great people. Kent has a long history of producing great fruit, and that's because we have a temperate climate. But we also have the infrastructure now in Kent that supports that. So sprays and tractors and a workforce who understand about fruit and are prepared to take a risk with fruit. So grape growing, which is where it all starts from, actually Kent's well suited for it, and so it's a fantastic place to start. And then we sit right next to the biggest market in the world for champagne outside France, which is London and the southeast. So it's a great place to do business, and it's also we've got all the natural infrastructure to make that happen. So it should be no surprise. Although for 14 years people thought I was a nutter, and then it takes Tattinger to come along and suddenly I'm a visionary genius. But that's the way it goes, I suppose.
Fair enough. Owen, you mix with all of the London types, in the tech scene. Are at parties that you're going to, are Kent wines becoming a bit more sort of higher up on the menu kind of thing?
I think definitely the whole concept of artisan produce and local produce. Again, if you look at 10 years ago, that wasn't that cool. Now it's actually quite trendy to kind of see that stocked in trendy bars, and certainly I've personally witnessed the growth of Frazer's brand, and stocking it in major supermarkets like Waitrose and the big ones, who are now putting far more of an emphasis on the power of stocking those lines that perhaps wouldn't have even had a look in the past. So yeah, definitely I think there is an undeniable growth in that sector.
But the one thing I might ask, Frazer, to yourself, is this growth sustainable? Are we, is there going to come a point where Kent's wine industry, gets to be? After all, there's only so much land on the North Downs, I guess, that's ripe for a vineyard.
Well, we're a very, very long way away from that yet, but I'm fairly certain that point will come, and there will be a point at which the industry starts to consolidate. I'm fairly certain about that. Some people's dreams will be a little bit shattered when they can't live with the power of some of the brands that are out there. And this game really is all about creating great brands, the brands that people can touch and feel and feel part of. So I think we'll see a lot more vineyards being planted, and those vineyards have to go to homes of people who are producing brands. And that's really the game in sparkling wine in particular. It's all about the building of brands, and actually it starts with the consumer wanting to drink it, and then it'll end up being planted. So if we keep that demand going, and we keep the price at a sort of attractive level, then I think we'll see more and more of that. And it comes with a whole bunch of interesting things for Kent, because vineyards do so much more than, say, apple orchards. They bring tourism, they bring with them a sense of pride, a sense of purpose. There's real craft, there's real skill, there's food goes with it. It's a really, really exciting opportunity for Kent, I think.
Kent has 2 listed vineyards, Chapel Down and Gusbourne Estate. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where we see another one trying to float?
Well, I think you will see potentially more fundraising. I think a lot of these businesses are owner managed, so they've been in families or they're part of the family concern, and so listing to them is probably a little remote. But when we see changes in that family, I think that might happen, and I think it's incumbent on Gusbourne and ourselves to try and make sure that we don't see failure, that we roll that industry up in a consolidating way. So,
is crowdfunding the future then? Do you think is that going to be the way that these businesses actually expand?
At a small level, I mean, I'd say small up to a couple of million. I think crowdfunding is a fantastic way of doing it. But I think you've got to remember that to get £2 million in crowdfunding, you've got to get 1,000 people to give you £2,000, and that's quite a lot of people to give quite a lot of money. And no matter which way you cut it, even if it's 100 people, it's 10,000 people got to give you £100 to raise £1 million. So you do need institutions to come along with it as well, and you do need high net worth angel investors, and we do need the tax breaks for these guys. So when the industry really starts to roll up, we're going to need some pretty serious money, and we want the crowdfund to come with it, but we are going to need some fairly serious money to make that happen.
Sure, brilliant. Just very, very, very quickly. Would you, if you're sitting on the supermarket, you're at the supermarket, you see a Chapel Down, you see a one from France, which one do you pick?
Ooh, Chapel Down, of course.
Brilliant, right, that's great. Both of you, thank you very much for coming. That's it for the latest edition of Chris & Co, our show looking at the issues affecting business in Kent. You can keep up to date with all the latest on our website, kentbusiness.co.uk, or you can follow us on Twitter @KentBusiness. That's it, thanks for watching, goodbye.